Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Liverpoolcom Podcast. I am Kristian Walsh, and with me this week are Joel Rabinowitz and Dan Morgan. How are we, gentlemen?
Very well, thanks.
Why do we always say we're very well? Can we not just be honest and say we're in the middle of a pandemic? It's 30 degrees outside, and actually we're not very well. We're actually just about getting by.
I kind of take it as a general question. You know, sort of a weekly question. So in the context of the week, I'm not going to start with all my problems, Chris, nor the listener. So, and generally I'm all right. I mean, it's hot today, but you know, that's my sort of take on it. I'm generally okay. So I'll go with very well until I'm not. And when I'm not, be 45 minutes on why I'm not. So.
It feels the polite thing to say, isn't it? Just going, yeah, I'm fine. Absolutely,
yeah,
it's fine. It's for those of you outside of the UK who are listening or watching us on YouTube. It's absolutely sweltering here in Liverpool. It's absolutely sweltering here in the United Kingdom in general. It's a heat wave. I'm missing the air-conned office. I'm missing basically just being able to do something other than wear a pair of boxers around the house. So I have actually put shorts on for this recording. Everyone will be pleased to know. And I'm glad to see everybody else is also fully clothed. Before we kick off with our, I suppose that you can call it a bit of a game. I'm sure the players involved wouldn't see it as a game. But before we talk about our sort of transfer game for this episode, just wanted to touch on something I saw on social media last night after the. So, I mean, we're just for pure and utter sort of transparency, we are recording this on the Thursday, so the night after PSG versus Aston. So this will be going out a little bit later in the week. I think it's going out at the weekend. However, just wanted to talk about Thomas Tuchel. And ultimately, I just threw it out there on Twitter that, Thomas Tuchel, sort of, I don't really like him and I don't really know why. And I just had thousands and thousands, maybe an exaggeration, of Liverpool fans in my mentions, and then fans of Arsenal and City, and it was a real sort of bonded experience. Sort of saying that they really don't like Thomas Tuchel. So I don't know. I just wanted to raise this with you two guys. I mean, have you got an issue with Thomas Tuchel?
I was glad when you pointed it out on Twitter, because it's one of the opinions that you feel like might just be one of your own dislikes, and you realise that thousands of other people have the same thing. I was trying to think about why it is. It's something to do with his face.
Everyone's got his face.
When the camera zooms in on him and he's got his mouth wide open, he's screaming yesterday after the PSG winner, and it's something about that aesthetic. I don't know, it's what he wears, the way he carries himself. I think you rightly pointed out it's something, especially from a Liverpool point of view, he was in those 2 Europa League legs in 2016 against us, especially at Anfield. He just seemed intent on sort of proving a point, and a little bit sort of too for his boots, felt of that. He kind of was carrying that sort of the new Klopp label, with that he was trying to like play up to that quite a lot, and I think that's stuck with a lot of people since.
I think that might be it. I don't think he is the new Klopp, is he at all? And I think I think he was really sort of unfairly labelled, because I think in that 2016 game, you're watching the highlights from that, and he probably saw that as a chance to step out of Klopp's shadow a little bit. And obviously, he's given it absolutely everything when a front three of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Marco Reus, and I don't even know who would have been on the Mkhitaryan. Yeah, of course. They all score, don't they? And he's obviously giving it the beans to Anfield, because, this really good squad are picking apart a team that's got Kolo Touré at the back, and eventually needs Dejan Lovren to head in the winning on the 94th minute. So, it's just something that stuck. A lot of things around Tuchel was to do with his face. I'm no overpainting. I'm not gonna get involved in that part of it.
I don't have a problem with him. He sort of strikes me as the guy who, I reckon if you seen him on holiday, you'd be like, "Oh, you wearing there, mate?"
Moody that.
I reckon you'd be like, "Oh, lad, come on." So your wife decked you out in like a 17-year-old drug out there. in a not very cool way. I don't. I mean, he's not the first manager to give it the big one at Anfield, is he? So yeah, he doesn't rub me up the wrong way in that sense. But if you want to have a conversation about Pep Guardiola or Erling Haaland, then I'm here all day.
He looks like a classic movie villain. I saw someone else say that, and it is. Yeah, there's something about that. It just looks a bit sort of sinister. I can't put my finger on it. But...
I tell you what, we've absolutely captured our market here, haven't we? Just cycling through the blood red channel, That's a nice bit of the agenda there with Paul Boston, Matt Alisson, a little bit of analysing Anfield with Josh Williams and David Hughes, and then it is us talking about PSG's manager and his moody rig out. So we will also talk very, very quickly about the new night kit. It's obviously been released today. You will have seen it. I'm not quite sure what colour they've gone for in the brochure. I always miss the New Balance sort of toxic fun and Scream and Aqua or whatever they used to call them. Joel, you like it. Dan, you don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of judge everything on the New Balance Orange kit from 17-18. It's like that long lost love that nothing will ever compare to, and therefore you wonder why you're bothering half the time. So yeah, it's not a patch on that, but then again, not a lot of things are. Bold citrus. I mean, I just think in general, Nike could have done better. It's not like they haven't had time to prepare this sort of partnership with Liverpool and its launch, and everything just feels a bit rushed, and everything just feels a little bit sort of half-hearted. And yeah, that's including the kits for me. I don't particularly like both of them, so I'm slightly deflated by what we've had from Nike so far. I'm not impressed as I'd hoped to be.
Joel just likes pretty colours.
I like colour, yeah. I think with Liverpool kits in general, like there's only so much you can do to a home kit, really. It's all small tweaks year after year. They'll change the collar or put some pinstripes on it, or Nike have done the teal, the sleeves and the collar. I thought the home kit was fine. I thought it looks a lot better on the players than it does just in the general images, which is usually the case. I think once you see this away kit on Van Dijk, a lot more people come round to it. But yeah, the away kit is where you've got a bit more scope to do something a little bit funky. I think my favourite Liverpool away kits are usually just when they invert the home kit essentially and just do a white kit with a bit of red. I quite like last season's one, the plain white one, which I was looking this up this morning for a piece I was writing. I was quite surprised. Can you guess how many times Liverpool actually wore their away kit in the league last season?
So which one was the away kit? One was the white one, wasn't it? Not because they wore. I reckon it was something like 3.
It was 5, which is a lot lower than you think. 5 out of 38 games. I think they might have worn a black one more than that.
Yeah.
So, if people aren't happy with this blue or teal or turquoise or whatever it is, the likelihood is they're not actually going to wear it that often. But
have you seen a leak for the 3rd one?
The checkerboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit similar to
it's very
the Warrior one.
Warrior one, yeah.
Georginio Southampton goal. He smacked it in off the bar. I always enjoy that game. But yeah, it is what it is.
Just a quick update on Thomas Tuchel. Guy has dropped me a message and said, I hate Thomas Tuchel. I irrationally shouted at the TV last night at him, and then and that was even before PSG scored. Too smart, arrogant, and clever for his own good.
Slot down there from Guy Clark. Not what you want.
Absolutely. I bet he's dying to get on now and just sort of go in 2-footed on Thomas Tuchel. We will move on to more pressing Liverpool matters, however, and we want to talk about tears today. Not tears in terms of the ones that we all cried after Crystal Palace in 2014, but tear as in TIER. And what we're going to do is go for the Liverpool squad, and there's a lot of talk at the moment about basically let's not beat around the bush. Liverpool are going to be doing deals this summer. A lot of it, I think, will revolve around the fact that it will come from player sales. Now, one of the big problems down here is that player sales at the moment are a little bit up in the air because nobody really knows what actual value looks like anymore and who has any money in this cold society.
Yeah, I think it's sort of... I think it's actually easier for Liverpool in the sense that they're not trying to sell a first-team player unless we sort of have a chat about Georginio Wijnaldum. But as far as we would reasonably imagine, they're not trying to sell a first-team footballer, and they're not sort of in any kind of... I get the buy-to-sell angle, but they're not in any kind of rush to buy, you would imagine. So therefore, they're not in any kind of urgent need to sell. So I think there's still an element of Liverpool holding chips here and being able to dictate. And sort of, you know, I'd imagine the chat around this sort of thing in sort of boardrooms and offices in Melwood is we sort of just sit back and see what type of market takes shape. And if we still can't grasp it, then just judge everything on its merits. I think it's interesting that sort of the snippets of briefs we've had. I mean, there was David Lynch in the Standard the other day when talking about Ismaila Sarr, and he says a similar thing about selling to buy, but he name checks specifically Grujic, Wilson and Shaqiri. I mean, there's no mention of Origi in there. There's no mention of other players who we might think Liverpool might look to move on. So I think Liverpool will be totally relaxed about this. I think they'll sort of have a, let's see who shows an interest and let's see sort of what comes in. And if it's a case that, you know, it's another loan for 6 months to a year before we do sell in terms of players out, then that's fair enough. But, you know, if there's a scenario conversely where they're left with 4 days before the window closing, you know, 4 player sales and the money they've wanted, then subsequently, as was briefed, there might be then a move for another player that likes a star.
Joe, it's an interesting situation because nobody really knows anything at the moment. And I think, as Dan says there, sell to buy isn't really a fair way to assess this because they don't necessarily be buying and therefore they're under no pressure to sell. However, you know, do you feel it's important to kind of, because we will, you know, we're putting these tiers together. Do you think it's important for the club to sort of have in the back of their minds who ultimately are the untouchables? You know, that they absolutely not in a million years Liverpool will ever sell these. And then it gradually starts to become likelier and likelier and likelier until we get to, and I'll explain the tiers in a moment, but if you put in a bid for them, they are gone tier.
Definitely. I think it's funny to be having this conversation now because I think for so many summers that I can remember, you could almost make a case for nearly every player in the squad bar sort of maybe 2 or 3 individuals that if the right money came in, you might consider doing something. I think now you look at kind of what most people would consider the first 11, the Champions League 11, and like Dan said, this is the possible exception of Wijnaldum because of his contract situation. You wouldn't even countenance it at all. I think there are a few. Obviously, you mentioned Grujic and Wilson there, who I think if they get any sort of reasonable money this summer, and quite what that is now, we're not quite sure. But they will probably look to sell because it's hard to see either of them really having a role next season. I think you touched on Origi there. I think he is the kind of the really interesting one who sort of falls in between the two because I think he's one that pre this whole pandemic, I think could quite easily envisage a scenario where a club comes in with 30 million. Maybe I don't think that's unreasonable given his sort of pedigree and the goals he scored and the fact he'd just be coming off winning a title for Liverpool. I think adds something to his price tag. I don't think you get anywhere near that kind of money for Origi now. I think with someone like him, it's going to come much more down to what he wants, whether he's happy to sort of do another season as sort of handyman, basically comes in off the bench 15, 20 minutes mostly. But he's not one that I don't think Liverpool will be actively looking to sell. I think if a club comes in and he's desperate to move, there might be a conversation, but I think should be sort of separated from the Grujics and the Wilsons at the moment.
So these are the tiers we've come up with. So we will sort of come back to them throughout the podcast. But tier 1 is basically not in a million years. Never, ever, ever would Liverpool ever dream of selling these players. Tier 2, you're going to need a world record fee to pretty much persuade Liverpool to let them go. Tier 3 is okay, tell you what, not for sale, but we can be persuaded. Tier 4 is very much just we're listening. So go on, tell us a bit more and we'll shoot off. Tier 5 is not sure, but how about a loan and let's see how it goes. And then tier 6 is yes, 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 otherwise known as the Loris Karius tier. So we won't go through everyone in the squad. I'll mention names and we'll sort of very quickly sort of say where they are in the tiers. But I do want to focus on particular ones because I think there is a real argument that you can put them in particular tiers, and I think we will probably differ. And we want you, the listener or the viewer, as I said before, you can be listening to this as a podcast on the Blood Red channel. You'll be watching this on the Blood Red YouTube channel. So however you are consuming this, let us know at Liverpoolcom _ and tell us what you think. We'll also be putting up a poll on the website and on our social, so you'll be able to give us your thoughts on all of this. So just start rattling through. We go from sort of top of the squad to the bottom in terms of listings. So Alisson, tier 1, nobody's arguing with that, are they?
No.
Adrian.
3.
I'd say between 3 and 4, probably 3. Okay,
Yeah.
We can be persuaded.
There's no point in loaning him.
No.
Yeah, I'd agree with 3.
And I wouldn't be actively listening to offers. It's just I've seen enough of Kevin Kelleher, with apologies for butchering his name there, to step up. But Adrian, absolutely, I keep him. I know a couple of people might be saying there, Atletico Madrid, but ultimately he's a number 2. Loris Karius, do we put him in a Loris Karius tier 6?
Yeah.
A bit silly if we didn't, wouldn't it? I think people forget, actually, they'll probably get a fair back for him still. So, 5-6 million.
Yeah, it's not to be sniffed at. They'll get the money back, which is, considering all that's gone on, it's an accomplishment in itself, really.
What are they? Maybe one of the biggest sort of seismic shifts came in a pre-season friendly at Tranmere.
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
You could write a book about that, and maybe we will.
I wrote my first Liverpoolcom piece on that.
Really? That's interesting.
I did, yeah. We'll
dig that out.
Yeah.
Very on brand, that. So, a year later, we still haven't really got over any of that. And ultimately, I'm ripping into Loris Karius by putting him in tier 6. Virgil van Dijk, tier 1.
Yep.
Joe Gomez.
He's the same for me.
Yeah.
Ooh, tier 1. Joel Matip. This is the first one I want to focus on.
Oh, okay.
This is the one. So I'm interested to see what you gents will go for. Obviously, you're not getting a world record fee for him, but are you putting him in tier 3 or tier 4? Or are you putting him in tier 1?
Remind me, the definition of 3, Chris, is that you would listen to offers, but you're not actively looking.
Yeah, basically, you're going to have to twist that arm.
And what's 2? Sorry?
You need a world record fee.
Yeah, so he can't be 2.
I think he would have to be 3. But you could make, in my opinion, you could make an argument for 1 based on the fact that we've no Lovren now, and we've just, if we were to lose Matip, then what? And there's a dearth of centre backs in the game in general.
Yeah, I think I'm with Dan there. I think pre Lovren going is maybe a conversation about 3, but now I think that'd be crazy. The only with Matip, you kind of have to separate Matip being available and the reality of Matip. I think as far as third choice centre backs go, he's pretty much as good as you'll get in terms of a player who's happy to have that role and quality you get when he does come. I think my only real concern with him is the fact that when you need him, he's often not available. But I think, the situation we're in now, they're not going to go out and buy anyone better. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be thinking about it.
It's interesting, isn't it? When you think about it, he starts the derby on the first game back.
Strange,
That doesn't say to me that it was sort of a rotational thing. That's after 3 months of no football, and sort of you'd envisage, okay, there's a few sort of different things going on in that team, but Matip at centre half ahead of Gomez just raised a little eyebrow to me at the time in terms of just what he can still offer and how he's still viewed.
That's tell you what's interesting in that context as well, Dan. If you remember, Gomez has a really poor start to that restart.
Yeah.
You could argue until the last couple of games, he's probably one of Liverpool's poorest performers, if not the poorest performer. And now, obviously, he's been setting really high standards all season, but you wonder if there is anything in that. I don't think it's as simple as Van Dijk and Gomez to Matip 3. I think we're still in a situation where it's Van Dijk is 1, and then you've got 2A and 2B.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we've said before, Matip is good in the air. I think he looks a little unorthodox at times, but he's good in the air, and I think you've got to be good in the air when you defend them for Liverpool, because teams will be trying to sort of squeeze you, get you on with long balls. And it's a big part of Liverpool's game, how they turn the screw by just winning those battles. Gomez, incidentally, not that good in the air, and it's definitely something he can improve. But I'd be putting him in 1. And I think this is something to mention with these tiers. Ultimately, I don't think you necessarily drop from a tier 1 to a tier 3. It's to a tier 2. As we say, I don't think anybody would deny a world record fee for Matip. But at the same time, maybe you could be persuaded. So yeah, it's an interesting one for me. Yeah, tier 1 at the moment, not in a million years. Even 80 million, what are you getting for 80 million? That might sound ridiculous, but then you're obviously possibly upsetting Joe Gomez, and I think you need that kind of realism that you're not going to go out and get Koulibaly, and you can't have 3 centre-backs at the club, Van Dijk, Koulibaly and Gomez. It just doesn't work like that. Being the man, Koulibaly also plays on the left-hand side mainly. So I put him in tier 1. Sepp van den Berg, don't know much about the player myself. I'd be tempted by 5 for a loan, but ultimately, again, I don't know if they can afford to loan out centre-backs at the moment.
I think might actually help him, to be fair. I can't see him getting much sort of developed minutes around the first team this season. So maybe sort of getting him in the Championship, not to be cliched with it, or getting him in and around sort of top tier football in the country would benefit him better than sort of another season in the 23s.
I think so. He's a slightly different to the likes of Nico, William, Curtis Jones and Elliott, who you feel like have reasonable chances of coming off the bench in league games and starting cup games. I think obviously Van den Berg did get a few in the cups, and to be fair, I thought he did quite well against Shrewsbury in the second leg at Anfield. He was quite impressive that day, but I think looking ahead to next season, it would take a pretty disastrous injury crisis for him to come anywhere near the team. So I think, if there was a loan move somewhere that he was keen on, I think it might be the best next step for him.
Again, we'll always mention this. This is probably the 7th time I've mentioned it, and we're only 6 pods into the Liverpoolcom podcast. The reception he gets in New York is incredible. And it's just moments in time that will never, ever be replicated. A fan base so desperate for some sort of someone new to support. Sepp van den Berg gets a standing ovation as he comes onto the pitch. Imagine what they would do segueing into Konstantinos Tsimikas. I assume he's tier 1. We're not selling him. That would be really, really weird. Andrew Robertson.
Same for me.
Yeah, same.
Tier 2. I'm going tier 2 with this.
Yeah. To be fair.
I mean, I don't know what a world record is for a left back, but
are you banking on Tsimikas to just be the number 1, or finding someone who's better than him? It's a lot of hassle, isn't it?
It's a lot of hassle, but I reckon if you got an £80 million bid for Robertson, I'm sort of talking myself out of it as I'm talking there. Okay, I'll put him in tier 1 for now. But let's see how.
There's no sure bet.
No, there isn't.
That's the thing. You could buy back Reguilon from Real Madrid, but he could just be another Moreno. You don't know.
Ultimately, what's the point? I just got an itchy football manager finger there. When you're bored and you just want to spend some money and you sell someone. Trent, tier 1.
Yeah. Yep. Possibly the most tier 1.
I think absolutely. He is. I think he's one of the most tier 1s in football.
Yeah, unbelievably. Like, it's so under the radar, just sort of how much of a absolute megastar he is already. Like, he's sort of in the bracket of Mbappe, when you sort of put him in terms of age and accomplishments and competence, it's unbelievable that it's just sort of assumed that, you know, he's Liverpool's right back, and yet he's very good. It's incredible just how underrated he is, actually.
Absolutely, and as you say, I think it's the age. I think it's the look. You don't keep players because they're marketable, but he is ultimately, and I don't think he's going to carry Liverpool on his shoulders for the next 10, 15 years. I don't think Liverpool is set up to be like that anymore. I don't think he's going to be Steven Gerrard, and I think that's a thing, and that's not against Steven Gerrard. I think Liverpool now have a structure in place and a culture where Trent can be Trent and be really, really good, and he doesn't have to feel that external pressure, especially now because the Champions League and the Premier League have both been delivered in the space of 12, 13 months. You know, he won't have that sort of that cloud over his head that Gerrard always did. But if you're looking at an ultimate sort of one man, can't say he is absolutely Mr. Liverpool in the sense of everything that Liverpool do good revolves around him. It's, you know, Trent's absolutely tier one, and I'd, you know, put him alongside Mbappe. And a bonus that he's local. He grew up in West Derby. He knows the city. He knows the people. He's a boyhood red and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Just wonder if there's a picture of him lurking in an Everton kit holding the Charity Shield somewhere.
He's got an Everton tattoo on his arm.
Yeah, the old Lego one. Nico Williams. See, I think you'd be daft not to put it like tier 2. If someone wants to pay a lot of money for Nico Williams, I don't think he's as much of a sure thing as some of the other youngsters.
No, it's difficult to gauge what his level is or could be. I think that's why I'm struggling with it. I think I probably would say I want to see another season of him, basically. Yeah. So for now,
I'd actually sort of open him up to a loan rather than any kind of talk of selling him. I don't think you get anything from selling him. I don't think you benefit anything from selling him, especially after this season. So even with ridiculous money, there's just no point. Because then the argument is, well, who's seeing something we're not? If we do go down that road, so maybe if, you know, Smikas turns up and in training, he's showing a clear versatility of being able to play both flanks, and they're happy with sort of Milner floating out there again. When need be. Unlucky James. But yeah, I think, you know, Nico Williams sort of doing a season at Brighton, for example, would be intrigued, to say the least, for me. I'm not saying I'd encourage it, but I think if the right loan offer came in, I'd be willing to listen.
Yeah, I think I'll go along with that. I think it all depends on the balance of the squad. And I suppose
I think we need it for next season. No, I just think for the same reason that we needed Tsimikas, I think you can't be asking Trent to do a third season of playing basically every single game without any rest. When you look at they've released the dates, not actual fixtures today, but there's going to be a need for rotation. I don't think you can be asking Milner to play right back in this team that regularly. So yeah, I'd be wanting him to hang around unless someone's willing to give us 40, 50 million, which I can't see.
But I think that's tier 2. I think you're putting that in tier 2. It's not necessarily a world record bid, but you know, it's ultimately we're going to give you a lot more money than we probably should do for this player. I just loving the conversation of like getting into Klopp's office and Klopp going, I've got good news and bad news, James. Good news is left back, sorted it, no more. Bad news is you're playing right back for half the season. He'd be absolutely delighted with that. Fabinho,
Oxlade-Chamberlain, right back.
Well, we'll move on to this.
Just throwing it out there. Right back. Sorry.
Fabinho?
No, number 1.
No, I think he's tier 1. Yeah.
I think he's very hard to replace. And here we go. Georginio Wijnaldum. This is the one. I'm very interested in your thoughts. So obviously, just to recap where we're at, we don't know where we're at. Georginio Wijnaldum now has 11 months left of his contract. It's starting to feel very, very similar to Emre Can. The noises coming out around Wijnaldum is that there's no progression with talks. you've obviously got this Thiago stuff floating in the ether, which really doesn't make any sense, but might kind of make sense if Gini Wijnaldum's going to be leaving. Joel, where are you with Gini Wijnaldum? What's going on? What would you do with
him? I don't want to lose him, put it that way. I think he's such a difficult player to sort of analyse because, in a sense, I would argue that he could almost start for any team in the world, or rather, he wouldn't necessarily oust players, but if you dropped him to Bayern Munich or Barcelona, Real Madrid, he doesn't look out of place at all. And yet there's no sort of defining asset that those clubs would look at and think, oh, we have to pay 40, 50 million for him because he doesn't score loads of goals. His underlying stats are one that sort of sets him out above the rest. He doesn't get assists. I don't think he got a single assist last season at all. And yet he's kind of the most sculpted midfielder to what Liverpool do. Klopp's basically spent his entire time moulding Wijnaldum into his kind of this sort of niche role, really, which is really difficult to define and takes a lot of learning for anyone else who tries to come in. So I'd like to see him sign an extension, but then you get into a conversation where he doesn't want to do that for whatever reason, fancies a new challenge and feels like he's accomplished what he wants to at Liverpool, then you start to weigh up, is it more advantageous to keep him for the season or take what we can now and not lose him for a free? I suppose that comes down to what fee you're getting this summer. I can't see any club really coming in with mega money. I mean, I wouldn't be looking to sell him at anything like the price you'd probably get, which is, I would imagine, somewhere around, you're not getting more than 30 million probably at this point, which is what Thiago's sort of being touted at. So I've given a very long and convoluted answer there, but basically I'd like him to sign an extension and it would have to take quite a lot of money for me to want to sell him this summer, I think, is where I'm at.
How about you, Sam?
I think he has to be a sort of a 1-for-1 type of deal if he does go. Now, I'm surprised sort of the creative swap deal with Bayern hasn't been mooted. Whether Bayern would be interested in that is another matter. You know, we've seen it with Pjanic. We've seen it with we've seen it with sort of Højbjerg and Eric Walker-Peters in separate deals that look very sort of balancing of books.
By the way, Dan, I just
Kyle Walker-Peters. By the way,
you've amalgamated a Stoke left back. Oh no, he's a Burnley now. A Burnley left back and Kyle
Eric Walker-Peters. That's brilliant. Oh, what a player he would be, by the way. Brilliant. Eric Walker-Peters. Fantastic. It would have to be a sort of a 1-for-1 feel for me. And even if it was the case that we sort of signed Thiago for 30 million, Wijnaldum, if it doesn't go to Bayern, would have to go somewhere else for about the same money. And by the way, you know, let's have it right. If you're Barcelona.com sort of writing about the prospect of signing Gini Wijnaldum for 2 years, then I think you're finding all kinds of exciting and creative ways to see him where he fits in that squad and that team. So every Liverpool player now, in context of this game and in general, has a pedigree because they've won the European Cup and the Premier League in the past 2 seasons. So every player comes with kind of that kind of caveat that they are winning, are bona fide sort of Jurgen Klopp players. So yeah, again, like Joel, long and convoluted. I don't know where I am with it, to be honest.
I think I'm probably tier 3.
I think probably am myself, yeah.
I think it's a case of, look, ultimately, let's say we don't know what's going on with this Thiago stuff. There's too much noise around Thiago for it not to have some sort of foundation. Not from a Liverpool end, just from a Thiago end and a Bayern Munich end and that kind of thing. But ultimately, let's dismiss the Thiago link for a moment. I think you're still getting a decent amount from Wijnaldum, even if his contract was down this season, than the 20-25 million that you might get for him. I just feel like you can't really replace him, and if you can't replace him, then don't sell him. I think that's a big thing. I think you mentioned that we mentioned it with Matip. Just spoken a little bit about it with Nico Williams. I think if you can't replace that player, if you're visibly making that squad poorer, and you're not going to reinvest with a player who's better, to be honest, because there's no point going sideways with a different player, because you've got the whole idea of transitioning into a new side and settling in and that kind of thing. If you can't do that, then let's not do it.
And to do that. They've got no pre-season to learn it. So
exactly. So I think, I'd be tier 3, but I think it's one of those where you sort of it'd take a decent bid to persuade me that it's a good idea. Naby Keita.
2.
I'm on 2.
Yeah,
I think we're in agreement. He's absolutely not indispensable, but at the same time, you're going to have to really, really interest Liverpool with a big bid. Jordan Henderson, I'm just going to say it's here. We don't sell the newsletter of the European Cup and the Premier League.
yeah.
No, yes, tier 1.
Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain.
2.
Yeah, I think 2. There's not a lot of point in selling him, but if someone offered stupid money, I'd think about it.
I'd argue 3, but again, it's the same principle of is there a player who's out there who's better, and probably not at the moment.
The other thing with that as well, Chris, is sort of how long do we have to wait for a player to understand what's required of them at Liverpool when they do come in? And that you can say that for all of these in terms of, we can replace him with X, but there's sort of, with everyone, there's sort of a 6 to 9 month transitional period of just realising how hard this squad is to integrate into, even just in terms of training. It's often referenced that the training is more intense than the game half the time. Look at Minamino, for example. It's taken him, it's almost sort of had a physical impression on him. He looks shell-shocked half the time, just in terms of intensity on the pitch and stuff like that. So, I just, in terms of that alone, there's a lot of people who are sort of having this Oxlade-Chamberlain conversation, and I actually think he's had a good season, considering what he's come back from. I don't think there's been enough patience around him, to be honest, and I think he has shown that he gives Liverpool something completely different in those areas, and I think elements of his game are far underrated. So I'd be saying 2.
Yeah, I completely, just to build it, I think it gets lost that this is his comeback season after missing an entire year of his career, basically. He scores 8 goals, which is the most of any player in the squad outside the front 3. That's in all competitions. But yeah, I think as well we can dismiss the idea of him playing in a front 3, and I know it's not ideal, but he can still do it, and he's done it reasonably well on a few occasions. I think that's a valuable thing, and he's also at a good age. I think is it 27 this week or something like that?
He's going to be 20. By the time you listen to this podcast, he'll be 27.
Yeah, he's got miles left, and I wouldn't be thinking about getting rid.
Okay. We'll do these sorts of quick fire these next couple, because I think we can talk about some of these players in more depth on another episode. But Marko Grujic, I think this one is a simple kind of: do you loan him out again? Do you keep him? Do you sell him? What tier are you going, gents?
Any reasonable fee, I think I'd move him on. I think that's probably best for him.
I think that's your tier 4, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I'm just writing something as we speak on this. I mean, unless you're going to do something wild and consider him as sort of a centre-back 4th choice option, as well as sort of what's a 6th midfield option, then I'm with Joel 4. Get rid if the right offer comes in, whatever you deem the right offer to be.
I think plus Wilson. I think if you can get decent money for him and Wilson this time, that potentially unlocks one more big signing, whether that's Thiago or Sarr later in the window. I think those 2 are key, and I think given that he sort of enhanced his reputation over 2 good seasons in Germany, I think that's something Liverpool should be looking at.
Milner, I almost feel like there should be a Milner tier, because it's just kind of like Lee's aren't bidding 120 million for him. He is, isn't he?
He is indispensable in the sense of the standards he drives up. There's the whole Lallana stuff around what he did in training and sort of how much he kept standards up on a daily basis. And I think Milner is 100% in that bracket. I think that's a big reason why they're looking at Thiago, to be honest. So for me, he is pivotal, even if he only plays sort of 40-50% of games next season for whatever reason, having him in fit in training is going to be massive.
Good social media content, so you can never underestimate that.
No.
Curtis Jones, 1.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Don't sell your local scouser. Dan's pausing.
I'm going to say, so for all of these, Williams, Jones, Elliott, Brewster, I'm going to all put them in kind of a loan 4 type bracket. I can't remember which one the loan is. I think it is 4, 5. So I'm going to say that I'd be sort of open to not every single one of them, but a loan deal on each individual merit if it was the right deal. I think Curtis is maybe the one who I'd sort of be a little bit hesitant with that. But I think sort of would it weaken the squad immensely if any of them went on loan? Probably not. And might it benefit us in 12 months' time? Possibly. So yeah, I'm sort of going to put all of those in that one bracket just to save a bit of time.
Always looking to be tardy, or what's the opposite to tardy? Sort of on time. It's too hot to have good lines. Oviajaria 6.
I didn't realise he was still at the club.
Still at the club?
Well, according to transfermarkt.co.uk, yes.
Oh, I had a big Oviajaria. I had a big Oviajaria sort of. He's gonna make it. Campaign in 16-17. I'm going to keep quiet on that.
Good player. The loan deal was one of those like an obligation to buy at the end of it, but yeah,
it could be. To be honest, I'm going to trust us over Transfermarkt.
Take any money basically if he's still around. He's definitely on. He's definitely not ending near what Liverpool need now. Ben Woodburn, I'm going to be harsh and say 6 as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think the time has come. Okay, let's have a little look. So we're going to sort of Shea Ojo. Are we going to put him in the same situation? Yeah. Taiwo, I'd just be happy to get rid of Taiwo Awoniyi because I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah, see ya.
I'm going to have to say this thing. Yeah, he can have a good career. He's looked all right in Germany, but again, that's a 6. So we mentioned Wilson, we mentioned Brewster, so we leave it with the strike force now. Shaqiri. I am going 4 personally. I would listen to many offers that come in for him. I think he's hardly played for Liverpool in the past 12 months. I think I don't see where he fits in. I think he's probably impeding Harvey Elliott at some point. And he's probably on a sizable wages, which we could probably get off the wage bill.
With a hit of sadness because I'd really like watching him, but I think more so than him not fitting the style of play, I think it's just his injuries. He's barely been available all season. I think if you've got a squad player like that who can't get himself enough for the bench, then yeah, what's the point really? So yeah,
same.
Divock Origi. It's between 3 and 4, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think you've got to remember is his contract length, the fact that he signs a new contract, the fact that he is a European Cup winner in the truest sense of the word. He's won a European Cup in the same way Mario Götze has won a World Cup. He was sort of a pivotal point of doing that.
For me, this is almost entirely linked to what we would do with that supposed money if that came in. So if you're offering me right now, Brewster comes back having a really good loan spell at Swansea, becomes an option through the middle. So you've got Minamino, Brewster and Firmino can play the centre-forward role. You move Origi on, who basically only ever plays out wide for Liverpool, doesn't really start up front. And you use that money to get Sarr in, who's younger, quicker, much more similar to sort of Mane and Salah in terms of play style and profile. That I would be all for. But if it's just a case of selling Origi for the sake of raising some cash and not actually getting a replacement in, then no. I think it's tricky for him as well because he's not a young kid anymore. I think he must be 24, 25, around that. The guy's got a football. I think he's good enough to play for a reasonable Premier League or European team and score 15, 20 goals a season, all comps. He's not going to do that at Liverpool. So yeah, it's very dependent on the size of the fee and whether Liverpool could go and buy a player who's better, basically.
I wonder whether there's sort of a sliding doors moment with Origi if he does leave, in that, him and, as Joel says, for him and Shaqiri to leave, you would imagine sort of that opening the door to an Ismaila Sarr. Now, if Liverpool are then left with attacking options of Brewster, Elliott, Sarr, Minamino, then I would envisage with Brewster and Sarr in particular that there would be quite a bit of change in the shape to accommodate more of a 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2 type of approach throughout the season. And I wonder if, with that, Divock Origi's then just sort of sat in Italy going, I was waiting around for that for 2 years.
Yeah. But he thrives in the front two, doesn't he? He's
in the front two. He's sort of, Everton at home type of Divock from this season in the league, where he was unplayable for a large chunk of the game. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say you have to sell him in that context. For me, it would have to be kind of not a record bid, but a bid that sort of sharpens the jab of Liverpool and sort of makes everyone sit up and take notice enough to say, oh yeah, we'll seriously consider this.
I think it's take three then. I don't think it's taking a massive bid, but you're looking at something like 40.
Yeah,
which is a very simplistic way of looking at it, of course. But sort of let's just play sort of simple maths for a minute and something around there for me. But it's interesting because I think he's probably the one where there's going to be a bit of interest around him this summer. It's how hard teams want to push Liverpool's resolve, really. Just really, really quickly, to be honest, I feel like there could be a separate pod on what we're about to touch on in a minute anyway. Takumi Minamino, I'm putting him into it just because I think it would be absolutely hilarious if there was £100 million bid coming in for him.
Yeah.
But let's be kind to him. He's absolutely, nobody's listening to any offers. He needs more time. I've lumped Mane, Salah, and Firmino together, and I think that there's probably a pod at some point discussing about these as a trio. What they've achieved, but also what comes next and where we see them going in the next couple of years. I don't necessarily mean that isn't what club, just how they evolve at Liverpool or elsewhere. I don't know if you want to sort of lump all of these together for the tier, gents, or if you want to sort of go separately. Personally, I've got different thoughts, but I'll go really, really quickly. I go Mane 1, Salah and Firmino 2.
I think they're all 1.
You think they're all 1?
I think they're all 1, and I think sort of the conversation that you're having and your mindset, which I'm completely sort of, not on board with, but open to. I think that sort of maybe comes in 12 months. Yeah. I think then you really start drilling down on sort of how these players develop with age, what kind of players they become with age. And then more specifically and more maybe ruthlessly, I'll look at longevity. But for now, I think they all have to be considered as... I mean, they are in many ways the epitome of what this Liverpool side is, along with the likes of Van Dijk, Trent, and Alisson. So yeah, I wouldn't be entertaining anything. You could offer me all the money in the world for all three, and I'd say no, personally.
I think.
How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I think I'm on a similar page, especially this summer. I think they've all got at least another very, very good season in all of them. I think as well, there's the whole thing. If you look at kind of the top scorers across Europe this season, a lot of them, if not most of them, are sort of 30 plus. I think we need to sort of get out of the mindset that just once a player reaches 30 that you have to start kind of considering bids. I think these guys they're all 27, 28 now, or will be 28 by the start of a new season, if not already. They can, kind of injuries aside, I think go for another 3 years minimum at this level. There maybe comes a point when one of them, if like Firmino's legs start going at some point, at a lot of miles on the clock, then you start to think about it, but not now, because you could sell Firmino now and buy a player who scores twice as many goals, maybe even 3 times as many goals, but then you've got to completely revamp the entire way Klopp's built this team up from the ground. So No, right now, I think maybe next summer there's a bit more of a conversation, but even then, I still think no, it will take a lot to even contemplate it.
I think we'll definitely do that as a deep dive for an episode at some point soon. Just because looking at it, they're all 28. They all go out of contract at the moment in 2023. Hilariously, transfer marks, sort of have Salah and Mane, and their estimations are always sort of, I don't know how they make them, but they've got them exactly as the same in terms of valuation. So, I think it's a really interesting, it feels like they almost all come as a free. So I think we should strip them down, metaphorically, not literally. Although goodness, Firmino probably would anyway. He's absolutely fine with that. We sort of properly down into them individually and what the future looks like. However, that is the tier game, if you will, that is completed. I think what is interesting there, just wrap up, is that there's a lot of tier ones. I think that just shows how strong Liverpool are, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just on a separate note, we've all earned an ice cream from that endeavour in this heat. So yeah, well done, everyone.
Absolutely. Make sure you're sort of getting your gents, getting your ice creams. Did you get vegan ice cream, Dan?
Yeah, you can do, yeah. You get vegan Ben & Jerry's, not to sort of name check.
Other brands are available.
Other brands are indeed available.
Right. Thank you very much for joining us this week. We will be back next week over the transfer window, and obviously the season is going to be starting in a month's time. So, please keep on subscribing to the Blood Red channel. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. There's some really, really excellent videos on there, as well as just watching us and other shows such as Analysing Anfield, The Agenda, and the main Blood Red show as well. So, please get subscribed. Please tell your friends. Thanks very much for joining us this week. Enjoy the sunshine. Get the aircon on. Have your ice creams. Have a lovely weekend.